so our session is entitled Providing Successful Enrichment Opportunities with Zoom, Live Streams, and Google Drive. I'm Cathie Pearson from Woodland Hills, and my contact information is there. The context for this is just a little introductory information about where I'm coming from and what we're doing. I teach in Woodland Hills. I'm the kindergarten through 5th grade gifted support teacher at the Turtle Creek Elementary STEAM Academy, and I also work with our 6th graders at the Woodland Hills Intermediate School. When our closure began, our district teachers used existing tools, PowerSchool, Google Classroom, Schoology, Zoom, to communicate with parents about assignments and to deliver instruction. At that time, we did not have enough technological devices for all of our students, so we held a fundraising campaign toward the end of March. The district raised nearly $250,000 to ensure that all of our students would have access to technology. We began using Odyssey-ware for students in grades kindergarten through 5 and Edgenuity for students in grades 6 through 12 on April 14th, 2020. However, some of our teachers aren't able to use those programs, such as special area teachers and gifted support teachers. So we continued to use Schoology, or, and I always say that wrong, Schoology, Google Drive, Zoom, email, or other ways to contact and communicate with our students, as well as deliver the best possible virtual instruction that we can. So that's where I'm coming from. I had to do a lot of creating of assignments and deciding what the best platforms would be to use with our students. I think we've all been in that situation, and we've come to some great ways in our program to deliver the instruction and make it meaningful and exciting for the students. So that's what this presentation is going to be about, but I know we're all in similar situations. I just am taking a little trip back to March 12th. That was our last day of school. For our students, we did have an in-service day on the 13th. That very day, I had 3 teams of gifted students in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade who had qualified for National Geographic's Geo Challenge, and they were headed to Harrisburg. At the same time, that day, we found out from National Geographic that we would have to go virtual on something that was called Zoom, and I had no experience with that. So in 2 hours worth of time, we packed up all of our things because we knew we wouldn't be coming back, took everything home so that the students could somehow get together to do their virtual presentation and figure out what Zoom was. So over the next week with those 3 teams of children, we learned what Zoom was. I emailed parents probably about 2,000 times to help the students practice, rewrite their scripts so that they could go on the virtual platform as opposed to live. They knew things would be different, but they still wanted to make sure they were doing the very best they could. So we scheduled everything, we practiced, we learned how to use the virtual platform, and then National Geographic canceled their competition, much like everyone else did. So we weren't going to do that at all this year. However, they did decide to recognize the children virtually via a live stream. A few weeks later, so we learned what a live stream was, and I learned personally some things to avoid and develop some strategies to help the students get the most out of a live stream presentation. So part of that will be in this presentation, and some other techniques I've used as well will be here. So I've utilized many virtual strategies since the COVID-19 closure to deliver an individualized and group instruction to gifted students in 1st through 5th grade. In this presentation, I'll highlight how I've used a few of them, including Zoom, Google Drive, and live streams. So the first of those is Zoom, and I'm guessing at this point everybody's pretty familiar with how to use that. For myself, I had to have a few new GIP meetings over this time, so I've used Zoom for GIP meetings. Many of my students were working on individualized research when we closed, so they have used it to present their projects to me. We have done many group activities, including problem solving and creative dramatics. And in the future, next week, we're going to start having parent meetings to plan for our gifted programming for next year. Google Drive has been a tool that my students and I have used throughout the school year, so we are relying on it a little bit more heavily at this point in time. They are presenting a lot of their research through Google Slides because they might have done a live presentation in the past, but this is a better way for them to present that information. Obviously, a lot of the written work they're submitting through Google Docs. I had never utilized Google Forms before, but now I'm using them quite a lot. So I'll show you those in just a second. And of course, if they're making a physical project, a model, or they're doing a cleanup, they've been sharing things with me in Google Photos. I'm going to go ahead and click on Google Forms if you haven't seen them before. This is just an example of a form that I created for my students to deliver a live presentation, which you'll see more information about in a minute. But this one is called Famous Scientist Interview Questions. And using Google Forms to create this is very easy. It can also be turned into a quiz. I didn't plan on presenting how to do that now, but if we have time left at the end of the presentation, we can explore that if anyone needs to. But this is one of the forms that I've used. So I'll go ahead and move that and move on. So this is a big one that we did. This is a project that combined both Zoom and Google Drive. It was called the Cathie Pearson Show, much like the Oprah Winfrey Show welcomes famous scientists. So we did this with our kindergarten through third grade students, and we normally did it in the classroom, and it was a big performance, but I adapted it so that the kids could easily use it. So one of the things we did was present their research packet to them, the project description via Schoology, which is where our posts of general assignments go. But then I created a form for them to use to submit the questions that they would write that I would ask them on the show. So they wrote the questions that they wanted the host of the talk show to ask them. They familiarized themselves with the content of their answers, and I used their questions to, conduct the show. And then I sent out an invitation to the Zoom meeting, and all of the students met to deliver their performances. So you can see this is a form over here. And before they presented their information, I showed them a short video of an interview with Jane Goodall, so they would feel more comfortable with answering their questions. And then they delivered their performances. So you can see all of us in the meeting. And one really nice thing I might add that's been happening since this all started is that my principal has more time to see what we're doing. So she's joined a lot of our Zoom meetings, and then you can see all the kiddos. We have a young lady performing the role of Rachel Carson over here, and this is Galileo, and Dr. Wright, Newton, Einstein, and Mae Jemison. So when I saw what they did at this point, they all were able to use backgrounds. Their parents were assisting them in, using Zoom to the best of their abilities. They made costumes, they had props, and it was an amazing performance, all virtually. So it can be done. It took a lot of planning, and we had a great time. This is another just an example of a student who did one of his independent study presentation via a Google Slides presentation. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but you can see again that he was presenting as well, and myself and the principal were there. His presentation was on soccer. Some of his slides included, a virtual map showing some of the places where soccer was played. He did some animation to show where the positions were played on the soccer field. And over in the bottom right-hand corner, he made videos of himself during the quarantine. He went outside and made some videos of himself performing different soccer moves and inserted them into his Google Slides presentation. He's a third grader, so again, I was pretty impressed with his ability to master Google Slides. That would be something we would be learning in the classroom, but he was able to do that at home and present a very exciting Google Slides presentation. So that's just another way to utilize Google and Zoom together. And then live streams. So this probably is the bigger part or focus of this presentation. Just as an introduction, there are hundreds of educational organizations offering live stream events. Live streams offer students a chance to interact with explorers, authors, scientists, historians, mathematicians, activists, and others. The presenters are live and students can ask questions while the presentation is going on. Many organizations have pre and post activities that can engage students in critical thinking, problem solving, higher order thinking, and a myriad of additional learning activities. My students and I have engaged in live streams with the following organizations: National Geographic Society, the Toronto Trash Team. They have a great program about waste literacy, and notice how they spell the word litter, as if it were trash. And they are reading some books that have been written about solving the trash problem. The Save the Manatee Club is something we visit weekly. The Jane Goodall Institute is fabulous, and she reads books to the kids. And finally, the Loggerhead Marine Life Center is live every day, and they have great science, not just about turtles, but the entire environmental world. So I'm going to go ahead and take you on sort of a tour of some of these sites just so that you can see what they're like. I decided to use National Geographic as one of the premier sites because they have some great materials for you. You can do a pre-activity with the kids, an activity during the presentation, and also some post-presentation activities. The one that I'm going to show you in a minute is National Geographic Frog Discovery with Jody Rowley. So they have an Explorer classroom. And basically, almost every day, there's one of their explorers from around the world that will tell the kids a little bit about their work. Most of the explorers are at home now. Some of them are still on site. So we were with an explorer who was on a glacier doing some work, and she was showing us what she was doing. Others just, make their own slides presentations about where they work because they aren't able to go there at this time. But there's one thing about live streams that was very clear, very fast when this all started, and that is that in a live stream, kids have the ability to chat, and sometimes they get distracted by the chat instead of paying attention to the video. So that's where I'm going to take you first to see that, and then I'll start the video.
What have we found so far?
Oops, it's not showing the chat now. I'm going to have to play that and let you see it. There it is. So on the right, she's doing her presentation, and you can see the chat, and some of the students are asking questions about her presentation, while others are just kind of communicating virtually with each other. That's one thing that you'll notice if you start live streams and you've never done it before. A lot of students, and it may be just because they're not with each other in school, get distracted and have conversations about Minecraft or Fortnite when this presentation is about frog discovery. So I'll go ahead and show you a little bit of her presentation, and you can follow the chat for about a minute, and then I'll show you something that I developed to kind of allow the students to engage more meaningfully in a live stream. So I'll just play it for about a minute.
Dozen new species of frog. So frog that had been in these forests for, new species is kind of a funny word, but they've been in these forests and often the local people have known about them, but they're not known to science. So the little red dots are where we've done surveys recently, or over the last decade. I guess that's not that recent, I'm pretty old. And in the bubbles are some of the new species of frogs that we've discovered, we've officially named, and now they can be taken into account in conservation decisions. And I'd like to introduce you to some of these awesome amphibians, and then some other awesome amphibians as well, just because I can't help it. Ooh, okay. This is Kwang's tree frog. And I think it's one of the most amazing frogs.
Okay, so you can see that some of the kids are sort of distracted and communicating with each other. And, I've been in some live streams where there's thousands of emojis popping up, and other live streams where the organizers of the event get into the chat and ask people to stop doing that. So in order to alleviate that problem, let me get out of this screen, developed my own live stream form for all of the events, not just National Geographic, just to give my kids more of a meaningful experience. So I just asked them to submit these before a live stream, you can see during a live stream event, you're able to ask questions in the chat room while the presentation is going on. Before participating in the live stream event, please complete this form. You will need to research the topic or speaker before the presentation occurs. Write questions that you have about the topic or speaker and submit them to me on this form. You should write at least 3 questions and for each live stream you participate in, but you can write more. You should also keep a copy of your questions so that you are ready to ask them during the event. So it's a very simple form. You know, I ask for their name and ask them to write their questions down. And then I do participate in any live streams that I assign just to see that they're utilizing this form in the appropriate way and asking me meaningful questions while the live stream is going on. And then the best part, as far as National Geographic's Explorer Classroom goes, is the availability of explorers and also their pre and post activities. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So this is their Explorer Classroom, and all these links are in my slides presentation, and that will be available to you. If I scroll down, you can see that they're presenting a variety of presenters. Today is May 13th, so they can watch a live stream on the social world of chimps with Rachna Reddy. She'll be the explorer. And if you keep going down on this site, you see 3 links. One is to register. If they register, they can participate in the conversation with her live. So basically they'll be having a Zoom meeting. She'll do the presentation just like I'm doing now. They can ask questions in the chat if they're just watching, but if they register, they'll have access to the Zoom meeting, and when she's done presenting, they can ask questions live. If they don't want to do that, they can simply watch it. But finally, they have a family guide, which is fantastic in my opinion. So this is for the Rachna Reddy presentation. So you can see that, again, there's the link to sign up if they'd like to participate live, excuse me. Then there are all these pre-activities that they can do with links out to other articles that they have, other websites, toolkits, and a variety of other things. So you can see that, you know, it's a presentation on chimps, so they can link out to an article on Jane Goodall. They're asking them to brainstorm and think of questions, much like I asked them to do on my form. And then they have activities for them to do during the event. So they're asking them to do a 2-column chart, write things you're learning in one column, write questions they'd like to ask in the other. So if they haven't prepared any questions already, they can do that while the live stream is going on. And then you can see they also give them a link to a cause and effect diagram. And then they have things that they can do after the event. So there are questions that they ask them to think about. They have reflective activities, and they divide them up by grade level. So they have a component for grades K through 5. And these are pretty standard. Some sites have more specific things to the actual, you know, the Explorer's presentation on chimps, but National Geographic in grades K through 5 ask them to draw a picture illustrating one thing they learned from the Explorer. And I usually ask my older students to go to the 6 through 8 component. So it asks them to write a short news article to tell others what the Explorer is working on and why that's important. And finally, in grades 9 through 12, they're asking them to produce a short video or social media post explaining one thing you learned today and one thing you're curious to learn more about. After that, they give them extension resources, which takes them beyond just the presentation to other things that are related to it. So you can see what's available for grades K through 2, grades 3 through 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And then finally, you know, they usually focus on something that's going to help the world. So they're asking the kids to think about taking action together. So I really like National Geographic's live streams because they give you just about everything you need to be successful with helping your students participate in a live stream presentation. And if you go back to look at their menu of events, this is the only thing that's a little bit tough. They do have live events every weekday at 2. Sometimes they're hard to see, and if they don't scroll over the photos, they're not going to see this arrow, but if you click on the arrow, they'll take you to more events. Some students think that there are only 2 available. So you just have to make sure with this one that they're able to click right. And one more component that's really, really nice is that, and there are some down below too, there is a Spanish component. So some of the videos and some of the presenters will be presenting in Spanish. So that's a fantastic thing as well if you have any ESL students or others that might appreciate that if you're a Spanish teacher. So I love this site. Live streams are really fun for the kids, with that one little caveat of, you know, making sure they're participating in the chat meaningfully, but I think it's great. I'm just going to take you to one more site, and that is the University of Toronto Trash Team and their waste literacy education. So I'll do this one a little bit more quickly, but they have been having live streams every Tuesday at 2. You do have to register for these, and they do fill up quickly. It's free, but basically, this is their site. And if you scroll down, it'll present their schedule. They are on the last one next week. They just had the first 4. Every week, the author of a book reads the book, and then they have explorers at their university who have gone out all over the world and worked on waste reduction, mostly they do a lot of ocean work, but there's other things as well. And so they have the author, they have a researcher, and then they open it up to the students to ask questions and, you know, participate in the conversation. Finally, they have an activity. It's a 4-week, you know, solve the trash problem activity. And they ask the kids to post pictures of them doing some of the activities, and they award them little certificates and things like that. But next week on Tuesday, they're going to read Plastic Sea, A Bird's Eye View, which, you know, all the books have been fantastic. This one plastic bag, really related to what we were doing in class. So my kids all participated in that in some way, my younger students. And they are participating in the activities that they have as well. This is just an example of the live stream with the author of One Plastic Bag. So I'll play that for a few seconds. There we go.
Please. But if you have questions that come up during the presentation, please continue to use the chat, and we will try to answer as many as we can as we go, and then we'll get to the others towards the Q&A section. So let's get started. I'm going to turn it over now to Miranda to introduce herself and share from One Plastic Bag. So thank you so much, Manuela, for joining us today. And I'm just reading the chat. A few of you are familiar and love this book. It's one of their favorite books.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, if it's afternoon where you are. I'm Miranda Paul, and I'm the author of One Plastic Bag, which I will read for you today. One Plastic Bag is written by me, but it's illustrated by the amazing Elizabeth Zunon, and you'll see that art in just a minute. Before we get into that art, I have a couple of show and tell items behind me that I just want to point out before we start, and then I'm going to show you a little bit about how this book was made. Some of the items I have are some recycled bags made out of different materials. So this is a purse that's made out of recycled plastic bags, which you'll see in the book, One Plastic Bag. This right here is another kind of recycled plastic bag, a bigger reusable shopping bag, and it's made out of cloth strips from fabric that are left over, and a recycled sack of rice. So you see that? I also have a necklace here. I'm not wearing it today, but it's made out of recycled bicycle.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop that because in the interest of time, I have a few more things to show you. So basically, One Plastic Bag was written by Miranda Paul, and it's about a woman in the Gambia named, I've lost her name. Her first name is Aisatu, and she takes plastic bags, turns them into something called plarn, which is she makes the plastic bag into a long string of yarn plarn, and then weaves them into those beautiful bags. But it's her story, the story of seeing the trash and then repurposing it for something more meaningful. And then finally, my kids are participating in the 4-week waste reduction challenge. So this is what it looks like. They can go here afterward. The whole challenge focuses on that pyramid, that upside down pyramid, and then each week they give them something to do every day and ask them to post pictures of their work, and so they have a meaningful activity to do afterwards. Okay. Finally, these are just some pictures of my students and what they've been doing over the past couple of weeks to participate in that waste reduction challenge. So you can see them making posters and using water bottles instead of plastic bottles and recycling and all those wonderful kinds of things. So real quickly, the lessons learned about all these things, just overall, things can change very quickly and we have to be ready to adapt just as quickly. If you don't know this, I think you do if you're participating in this, the AIU3 has been a valuable resource to support remote learning since the COVID-19 closure began. When I had to Zoom from day one, that's where I learned how to do it. Thank you, Kevin. Students can be camera shy when they begin using Zoom, so pep talks can be an important tool in the on-camera process for your students. I have had some very verbal students freeze just because they're not comfortable with speaking into the computer, but at this point, they've become much more comfortable with it and they're pros. I always send a reminder to my parents the day before a Zoom meeting just so they don't forget. And my biggest lesson is that you need to prepare your students for chat rooms during live streams, encourage them to only ask meaningful questions during the live stream and avoid engaging in silly comments in the chat. There will be other students that will be making silly comments always, so you just have to, I kind of prepared them for that. Practical tips for you, plan Zoom presentations at least a week in advance and ask parents to reply via email to let you know they will be participating. Send a reminder the day before a Zoom event. If a child is doing an individual presentation, the parent must also participate in the Zoom meeting. I don't know if you guys have gotten that message from your districts, but just for practical safety purposes, I always have a parent there if it's individual. You should prepare your students for a live stream prior to the event and encourage meaningful chat room behavior. And lastly, remember to review all live stream events before you ask your students to participate in them. There are some out there that probably would not be appropriate for them. My next steps, sorry about that, my dog is barking. The next phase for us is our gift department will conduct meetings with grade level groups and individuals to plan for their 2020-21 GIPs. I never used Google Forms until the COVID closure. Now I've used them in several ways and plan to continue doing that when we go back to school. I would like to have more of my students register to speak in the live stream events. Currently, they have been participating in the chat room, but next week we're doing one with the Toronto Trash team and they're all registering for it. So I'm looking forward to that. And finally, I'm going to do whatever it takes to provide meaningful enrichment opportunities to my students and hope we're together again soon in person. So that's it. Thank you. And I think we'll open it up to questions.